What's up, everybody? It's Crystal Willis, and I'm super, super excited and honored today to speak with an incredible artist. DIXSON, pleasure to have you. DIXSON is a Rock Nation recording artist, songwriter, producer, and he is a multi-instrumentalist. He's worked with some of the biggest names in the business, and I'm thrilled to talk to you today because some of those names are actually like my favorite artists. So
Oh, fire.
I'm
Okay.
great. Well, it's a pleasure to talk with you, DIXSON, and just from a musician standpoint, as a musician who plays 11 instruments, which is so impressive, how did you start learning? How did you get started with music, and which instrument do you feel the most connected to?
Mm. Um, well, my parents were both musicians. My dad more so a singer, and he played a little bit of guitar. My
Mhm.
mom played clarinet primarily, but a few other woodwinds, and she like went to college on a scholarship for it. So music was always a big part of our family from like growing up in Atlanta and going to the games and seeing the marching bands and also playing in church. Um, is kind of how I got started professionally playing instruments. So my dad was a pastor and he got his own church when I was around like 10 or 11. And he didn't really have musicians. And so I had to learn pretty quickly uh, how to conduct service alongside him, whether I was on piano or on drums. And that's kind of how it began. And my parents just kind of let me explore. They let me like I wasn't buying like brand new instruments, but used instruments and pawn shops and all of that. Like if I saw something that I was interested in, they never really stopped me from exploring that. So by the time I was in high school, I just collected a bunch of instruments and could play most of them pretty well because I spent a lot of time just practicing. Um, as far as the instrument that I'm connected to the most, that changes depending on the project that I'm working on. We just finished Cowboy Carter earlier this year. So there were a lot of guitars around, and I fell back in love with playing guitar. And that's the one that I'm kind of most connected to right now. But that changes depending on the day and what I'm working on. So
I love that. The guitar definitely has a special place in my heart too. And just curious, when did you first get introduced to the recording studio? What was your first?
uh my parents well, two stories happened. So when I was a little kid, I was in this gospel music singing competition, and it landed me a recording contract that was very short lived, but that was the first time I was really in a professional studio. And during that time, my mentor, his name is Jonathan Curry, an incredible musician, built a studio in Atlanta. And it was the first time I had ever been invited to a real recording studio. And he just kind of let me have the run of the place as a kid.
Mhm.
And I attended many of his sessions where I was just kind of learning and listening and watching, what was taking place. And then I began to record my own records there. And my parents, when they figured out that I was serious about it, my dad ended up retrofitting our basement so that it was soundproof.
Okay.
Um, and they started investing in buying me equipment. And so I had a home studio pretty early. I was like 13 with a home studio, and
Wow.
people would come to my house and record. Like professional artists would come to my house and record because they were fascinated with the fact that this kid was like a real
Yeah.
producer and songwriter. So
That's
yeah,
amazing. That's
yeah.
amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And I understand you're amassing a little bit of a fan base, not just within the music industry, but just regular folks who love music, and you refer
Mhm.
to them as the congregation. What's the
It's
significance
funny.
behind that?
Yeah, they are kind of the congregation. I mean, it's just what I've grown up around. I'm big on community. I grew up obviously in a religious setting, with my dad being a pastor. My mom also was a choir director and sang in the choir most of my life, still sings in the choir to this day. Um, and they refer to the people who gather as the congregants or the congregation. So everything I do is centered around community. It's a really big part of my life, and congregation is just a funny nod to how I grew up, I guess. But also, like, the people in my audiences are like other musicians or people that can sing, and so they kind of form their own choirs. And I do things in my live show where I like get the audience to sing along as well, and that's always fun. And I just laugh because my father probably would call them the congregation too, and so I just think it's another way too for me to like remember him.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
I love that. That's amazing. As a church girl myself, I have much appreciation for that. So
yeah.
you've worked with, collaborated with, written for an incredible discography of artists, including Beyonce, 32-time Grammy winning. You're four-time Grammy nominated, Oscar
Yeah.
nominated yourself. So talk to me about your recent work with Beyonce on Cowboy Carter and American Requiem specifically. Can you share some inspiration behind that song, or maybe even the last song in the album?
Yeah. Um, so when I worked on Cowboy Carter, we actually started working on Cowboy Carter before Renaissance because I thought that she was going to do that first. And it didn't have a title then. We just knew we were working on like country music. And um, I went to Nashville and worked with this incredible crew of people. Ian Fitchhook, I'm trying to think. Oh, Cam Obi. Oh my God, Cam, who co-wrote American Requiem. Um, and it was all one song at first.
Mm.
And so when I got called, well, it was just the American Requiem part that I worked on. And so when I got the call back to come in when she was closer to finishing, I heard this new version of the song and was like, oh my God, this is like it's cool to do a demo, and then whenever Beyonce sings anything, it just becomes a new world.
Yeah.
And she's written new parts, and like it's a whole. So I had to like take a second and gather myself and understand, one, that it was like two songs now, and so they have to live in different worlds and different spaces. But the parts that I wrote on both American Requiem and Amen were, I believe, originally one song. They were just different verses in the song. So how
Yeah.
she masterfully figured out how to make those two songs, I will never know, because she is an alien. But I'm very grateful for that work, and so many beautiful like relationships and friendships came out of that process. We kind of traveled a lot of places to get that one done. And so I got to meet a bunch of people in the country music scene that I probably wouldn't have ever been able to meet if it weren't for this album.
Yeah. Massive, massive fan bases too in the
Yeah,
country scene.
yeah.
Wow. So that song's the beginning and then the end, it's like a
I
full
had no
body.
clue that that was gonna that was I had no clue that that was how that was gonna go down until the album came out. So I feel like that must be said because I did not know, and it was the biggest surprise, to start and finish the album. That was quite spectacular.
And you worked with her before, you worked with her on Renaissance as well. So you said you started Cowboy Carter prior. And
I'm
tell me
pretty
about Renaissance.
sure I'm pretty sure I wrote my parts on American Requiem before I did any work on Renaissance.
Mhm.
Um, Renaissance, it was weird. I had been working very hard on what I thought was going to be a dance album. And I honestly, I kind of got burnt out because it was like months and months of work. And I was like, I felt like the things that I was doing had kind of like stopped landing. And so I took a break. I took a break and started working on my actual project on O 04 Daisy. And I got a phone call from her team and they asked me to come to Record Plant and just, try some ideas. And I wasn't gonna do it at first, but the person that they paired me with was somebody who I really loved working with. His name is Blood Pop, and also um, I'm trying to remember who else was in that room. I remember saying yes because I knew it was Blood Pop, and Blood Pop is a good friend of mine, and honestly one of the greatest producers I've ever worked with, but also just a really kind dude. And so it was just a good vibe. And I walked in and I believe I was late for the session, which I rarely am when it's Beyonce.
Yeah.
But I was late, I think, because of traffic, and I was starting to get nervous because you never know if she's going to be there, if So I'm like, I don't want to be late for a Beyonce session. So in the car, I'm like freaking out. I'm like having a panic attack because it's traffic, and I walk in, and instead of like greeting everybody, I hear the beat for Pure Honey, and I'm like, turn the mic on. And I walked in there and just closed my eyes. And yeah, I looked up and it was Bad Bitches to the Left. And And so that happened pretty organically. And then I believe Virgo's Groove happened very early, actually. Virgo's Groove happened, my parts on Virgo's Groove, I cut around the time of like Be Alive was coming out.
Wow.
And I was just in a session with my friend Laven. Honestly, I think I was in a session for me. And he was like, bro, I got this thing that I want to send to Beyonce. And he played it for me and it was incredible. And I just like got on the mic and sang. It's so funny. I feel like every time I try to get
Hmm.
a Beyonce cut, it doesn't really work for me. But
But then when it's organic.
when it's organic and I'm feeling good and the energy is right, I just think, the energy transcends in the records and people feel good when they hear them, and then they can see themselves in it, and they can, with her, it's always cool to see how she hears the record. Because she's an incredible writer and an incredible producer and obviously the best singer on the planet.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's so cool to see how she sees herself in the music. And it's cool to watch. It's cool to watch on the sidelines. Like it's
Mhm.
cool to go to the concerts and all of that because her vision is just so strong and precise. And I'm very honored like to be a part of that support system. I feel like when that phone call comes, it's not just the clout or the opportunity. It's more like family, and your family is calling and they trust you and they acknowledge how good you are, both her and Jay, because I'm signed to Jay. I feel like they acknowledge like the talent in a very special way. They make you feel seen and heard. Um, and that's why I would want to work there. And with them, not because it's Beyonce. Obviously that is a plus.
Yeah.
But I've had nothing but just amazing, amazing support from them. And so I just return it, and hopefully we can keep making music together. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, let's get into your collaboration with Kehlani. And
Hmm.
recently wrote and produced much of her new album, Crash. So what was
Yeah.
that creative process like, and how is it working with her? What do you love about working with Kehlani?
Um, yeah, that process was another like lengthy process. I kind of consider myself a project guy. So I'm not always the best with one-offs. Like I like to get into the world of the artist and the vision behind the project. Sometimes helping artists like, create the vision for the project. And with Kehlani, because she's so creative, she just allowed me in the space. And I'm very grateful for that because I learned so much as a producer, having to do multiple jobs within this process. And so Kehlani's one of the best songwriters on the planet, and I stand by that. Just not only because I've seen her do it, but because of her long standing career of just being 100%er and like being like a really strong songwriter. We've seen it. So working with her was easy because I'm a really strong songwriter, and being in the room with another strong songwriter, iron sharpens iron, and it made it very easy to get the songs out. Also, Kehlani is one of the best singers on the planet too, and I think this album for me is showcasing some of her best vocals. Her fans love her so much. But I think even some of her fans was like, damn, we didn't know she was singing like this. And there's some days in the studio where I'm like, and I have videos too of me like yelling at her from the control room, like, do you hear yourself? Like, what are you doing right now? Like this, I feel like she was just in such a free and creative space to um uh to just be open and sing. And and it's funny because first off, I also want to be politically correct. I'm calling her she because she is my sister. I fully recognize that she identifies in both the she and the they categories, but she's my sister and I call her my sister. So that's why I'm referring to her in that pronoun. But I also want to be respectful and just acknowledge that. But I just feel like she was very free throughout this process, and it showed in the songs that were selected, in my crazy production. Because I gave Kehlani all the stuff that I was scared to play people.
Mm.
So that tells you a lot about her fearlessness as an artist and her ability to take chances and risks. um, I'm so grateful for that process because as a producer, I, I really wanted people to understand that I wasn't just a songwriter and a singer. And she really gave me an avenue to showcase my production talents to the world. And so I'm very grateful. I tell people this all the time. Like my main claims to fame is working with incredible female identifying artists. And I'm so lucky that I get trusted in that space. The climate that we live in, I must say is I could see why it would be hard to trust men in this space, but I'm so thankful for the artists who really trust me, and understand that I'm here to get the best out of them. And yeah, so that Kehlani thing is really special to me.
Absolutely.
Um, One of my favorite things I've ever worked on.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Yeah, you made a great point about, just your ability to be a sentinel and show up powerfully that way. And with her having her first single and music video tied in to bring awareness to what the tragedies that are happening in Palestine, excuse me. How did that collaboration come about? What does it mean to you to be able to bring awareness to such an important issue?
I mean, I believe it's the role of the artist to speak to our times. And I could guarantee you that there will be more times in my personal career that I will make things that will speak to what's going on in our world, the things that need to be highlighted. With Kehlani, I I honestly didn't know that Next to You was going to go in that direction until she called me about it. And when she said it to me, I was like, Kehlani, do what you feel you need to do to get the message out that you want to get out. I don't believe it's my job as a producer and a songwriter to stop artists from, bringing awareness to the things that they're passionate about. And I would only hope that when I am in that position, I'll have a me to say, go forward and do what you feel passionate about. Do, the things that you love. And for me, I have a soft spot for those people that are disenfranchised or displaced or in this situation that are being killed and murdered and displaced. And I would feel that way no matter what group it was. So yeah, with Kehlani, that was a very easy conversation. It's not my job to silence you.
Mhm.
It's my job to create a musical landscape for you to be able to get your messages across, and that's what I was hired to do. And I'm honored that she chose my work to do something that impactful. I think the merch for that um the merch for that song did like six figures, and all of that money went back to those people and those families. And that's work that I can't even like I can't even take credit for. That's just humanity showing up and recognizing that it was something bigger than notes on the piano or a drum loop. And so I'm thankful. I'm thankful for that opportunity, and that's an opportunity that I didn't see coming. But I'm so grateful that I could do something to help humankind.
Yeah. Do you believe artists have a responsibility to use their platform to advocate for human rights?
I think the artists that want to speak should, because if they have a reach, if they have a wide audience, then they've kind of already beat the game, right? So it's like if you have a message that is important to share and you already have the reach, I think it is your responsibility. I don't think every artist is called to do that, because some artists aren't called to do it because they don't have the facts or the eloquence to be able to share that message in a way that isn't harmful, right? But there are certain artists who are thoughtful and who are considerate of the times and the client and the climate, and they're able to share in a way that's palatable and understandable to a mass audience. And I think that's really important. I think it's either James Baldwin or Nina Simone who was like, it's the responsibility of the art to reflect our times. And that's what it's supposed to be. And if you're capable of doing so, then you should. If not, there are other ways that you can support without having to, make a song about it. But if you're capable of making a song about it, make a song.
Absolutely. I agree with you completely. I think as musicians, we do have a responsibility. If we can do more, we should do more.
Yeah,
Absolutely. That I love what you said about, our art being, you know, the way to tell stories and speak to what's going on in our world today.
yeah. It should reflect our times. Like I think that's what it is. I mean, the art generally does reflect our times. Like if you think about like just eras of music, like it prohibition gave us jazz, and it gave us a way to freely express ourselves and also say to people like in without saying like, oh, we're getting drunk and we're having a good time. You just listen to the way musicians are playing things, and it's drunken and sloppy. And so it's like a message, it's a secret message, to those people, is like, no, you can't stop us from doing what we think is right and what we think is our right. And so you'll find that in various eras of music. And I think naturally it will happen. And there's a certain natural selection that happens with artists who are capable of delivering those messages. Do I believe that certain artists are chosen to deliver those messages? Absolutely. And I think the universe or God or whoever you believe in chooses, the right people for the right movement for the right moment. And it's not my job to stop them, so.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about your music because
Hmm.
I know that a lot of the importance of your art and soul and your love for community goes into your writing.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your journey creating your most recent EP, Lovers and Friends, the
Mm.
Friends single, and just what, that was like for you. What themes and stories are you exploring in that project?
Well, Lovers and Friends kind of is a culmination of songs from a few projects for me. We wanted to build something around friends that that would just reintroduce people back to some of what we consider like my classics or standards as we like usher in this new phase of music that's coming. And Friends was like the first song that kind of introduced a couple things. It kind of introduced me collaborating with other producers and songwriters, which typically for DIXSON songs, they're usually 100% me or at least 90% me on production and on writing, unless we're using like a sample or something. And then that percentage kind of changes. But this is the first time that I'm like collaborating with other producers and writers on my stuff. And I will say it's been quite refreshing to learn things about myself through other people. And that's, a lot of times it's funny because I make the joke all the time. My label, I think, feels like they can just drop me off at the studio and they know they're going to get a song out of me. And because it's true, it's absolutely true. But it's been so cool to try different ways with other producers and other songwriters. Like I'm out of my I'm out of my head a little more now, when I'm working with other people and I'm getting to try like to sing the way that they're singing it, or people are like telling me, oh, maybe you should try to sing it this way. And I'm not used to that, honestly. In my career, I'm not used to that unless it's like another artist that I'm working for. But it's been such a refreshing experience. I'm actually like in the process of finishing my next album, or my first album actually, for Rock Nation. And it's taken some time to get to it because there's a little bit of like imposter syndrome
Mm,
after you've like left the studio and you're working with other people when you've been used to working alone. So you start to second guess. I'm one of those people. First off, I'm my parents' only child,
okay.
and I don't do group projects well. Like I never have. It's always been like I don't put my faith in people, but I do trust myself.
Mhm.
And it's been such a learning experience to have to trust other creatives. But it is so important to me to be able to take that community aspect and bring it into my personal work because I feel like I'm good at it when I'm doing it for somebody else.
Mhm.
But it's been a cool process to learn that it's just as important when it's a DIXSON song. And the songs are reflective of that. The songs feel bigger and grander because there's a lot of energy around it. And I must say, I've had such a beautiful community of people who just surrounded me while I made this effort to grow. And so yeah, I can't wait for people to hear this new stuff. But that's how we got to Lovers and Friends. We just wanted to not let the people forget about the classics while we, deliver them friends. And that's a different sound for me. And so we just didn't want, I mean, and I'm very transparent about like the music industry stuff. Like the music industry way is to like not alienate your audience, your core. But also if you're growing, show them how you're growing. And that, I don't like to do the pretend elusive thing when it comes down to the business because I want people who are following behind me to know how it works. And so, yeah, that's how we got there.
Well, you just recently dropped a pretty seductive video for Friends, music video.
Yeah.
Were you involved in the making of that video, the concept? I know you're really into art.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I'm usually involved in the visuals.
Okay.
I spent and I'm so lucky to have found early in my career a director that doesn't mind co-directing with me. And I've been very loyal to that director because the way we work is just so seamless and so collaborative. So from jump, I kind of knew what I wanted to do for that video. And then Kyrie comes in and he like reins me in a little bit and is like, all right, bro, we don't have $1 million for this video shoot. So let's do what we can. And I'll present to you what we can do, and then we can edit from there. And so that process is always fun because I get to exercise other parts of myself that sometimes go neglected when I'm just locked in a studio for 12, 16 hours a day. So,
Amazing. Awesome. Well, I know you're passionate about art, you're passionate about mental health,
mhm.
and do you incorporate that into some of your music as well? Daily.
Yeah, my daily life is just centered around wanting to just keep watch over my mental space. And like it's funny, I have ADHD, and I sometimes have trouble like keeping things clean. But in my mental space, I'm always trying to keep that room clean because it is it's crucial for what I do that I'm able to think. And I'm the quickest to tell somebody, hey, I can't even process what you just said to me right now because I'm in my process. And I'm lucky to have people in my life that understand that and give me grace. But mental health is so important to me, and it's become way more important to me over the last couple years because I recognize how easy it is for you to be derailed, especially in this business. And that's not to say that anybody else's, scope of work or field of work is not as stressful, but the music business is. It was so funny. Somebody said to me yesterday at the studio, the music business is either it's everybody's on a spectrum in the music business, but the spectrum is not like some mental thing. It's either like uh either either you're a complete psychopath or you're just like wildly creative and like untamable, and there's like no real middle ground. And so for me, I'm trying to consistently find the middle ground because there are certain things that I will be honest, like as a creative, I might be a little bit of a psychopath about. Like, I'm hell bent on getting the take right and making sure that everything sounds sonically just perfect. And then I'm also the guy who will make 12 beats in a day and have every assistant engineer running back and forth, changing mics, doing all of that, because my creative process is just I'm on 10 when I'm in it, you know. So I resonate with that, but my mental health space has been super important. As far as the art goes, everything I do is for the art. Like I've seen success as an artist. I'm never mad when there's a nice check involved. But I literally told my mentor yesterday I would do this work in the shadows for free without recognition. It is like it is my calling. It's what I was sent here on this planet to do. Um, so much so that sometimes I don't even know if I'm capable of doing other things, and I know I have the qualifications of doing it. But every time I try to start those things, I always land back at the music. Um, so that, yeah, the art is that's the most important thing. All the other stuff is secondary. Um, I care so much about the art, and it's reflective in my catalog and the things that I've worked on, the things that people have chosen from me, like as far as song placements and everything. All that stuff is artful. Like I always say, Be Alive is an art piece. Like Pure Honey is an art piece, you know, like I see them as my works, like my paintings, my babies.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
yeah.
Well, like you, I've been working in the music business a long time, and I just love that now artists are starting to talk more about mental health, and
Yeah.
it can resonate with so many of the things that you mentioned, from imposter syndrome to, feeling a little ADD, and,
Yeah.
I think that's great that you're talking about that. So tell us a little bit about your love for fashion. Every time I see you on a red carpet, where you're outside of the box, but you are hitting all the marks. So
Yeah.
tell me about your personal style a little bit.
My personal style varies. I feel like I'm I'm definitely a high-low kind of guy. Lately, as I've gotten older, it's been a little bit more high than low. Because the silhouettes and the shapes that I want are just only existing in certain spaces. Like if I could find well, first off, there was a point in my life where I could only find what I wanted to wear, at Neiman's, but I couldn't afford it. So I went to Zara and found the same thing, but just at a lower price point. And I feel like if I go further back in my career, you'll see that I was always a little avant-garde and always not afraid to like push the envelope with fashion. And that was when I could only afford H&M and Zara. And so I tell people all the time, like, if you bring me a good sweatshirt from Zara, I'm gonna wear it. Like I spend just as much time in Uniqlo as I do in Dover Street, because it's just about what you love and what you like. I think most of most of the last like 2 or 3 years has been very tailored, like suiting, and playing and juxtaposing suiting with like streetwear. I'm good for throwing a blazer on like with some ridiculously like oversized jeans and a big ass shoe. Because like I don't know. I always kind of want to look like I had a long night, but I was still fly like the next morning. Like I always want to look like the club ended at 3 and I had like a little rendezvous, after the club. And then at breakfast, I just showed up in whatever I was wearing from the night before. It's kind of a thing. There's a word for it too. My homie Guillermo from 424 kind of defined it, but I can't remember what the word he said was. But I was like, yo, that's me. Like that is me, quintessential me. I want to look like I live in these clothes, not per se that I got dressed. And so I try to make it look easy, even though what I'm wearing might be difficult for people to understand sometimes. And I try to make it look normal. Like I remember I went to the Renaissance release party, and it was obviously themed like, like the Vogue, the disco, the Studio 54 type time. And I told my publicist, I was like, listen, you may not know that I'm there when I get there because I'm just gonna come like fully masked up and in a suit. And she was like, Darius, I know you're not about to walk up here in a mask, but I did. And the first thing that happened to me was Beyonce comes over to me and was like, you always have that shit on. Like, she asked me what my mask was. Like, it was a whole thing. And I was like, I knew it. I knew that was the right move to make because when you walk in, you turn heads, but I made it look so normal. I was walking up to people like it was a normal thing. And it was cool. Like they were discovering that it was me and they were losing their mind when they saw that it was me. And like, yeah, I care about the looks. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's important. But I don't make a big fuss about it. Like anybody who's around me, like when we're getting ready for award season or something, like they know I'm gonna make it super simple and easy. It's like I don't want to have to think too much about it. I want to be comfortable. Most of the things I wear, I'm very comfortable in. Like I don't, yeah, I make it like it's a normal day, and I might have like, pearls and barrettes or something in my head, but it looks natural on me because I just don't make a big fuss about it. And yeah, just try to live my life. You have to adorn yourself. That's a thing that I remember like growing up around my mom and my grandmother. Like you have to adorn yourself. It's really about making you feel good. And if you look like you feel good, people are gonna feel good around you. They might even feel more comfortable about being in their own skin and what they want to wear and who they want to like portray themselves as to the world. And so I just try to make it easy for people to be themselves by just being myself.
Right. Well, I've
Yeah.
noticed that your fashion is as unique as your songwriting, your producing, and it's just beautiful to see that,
Yeah.
creativity come through
Yeah.
fashion. So we look forward to seeing what else you do with other brands and collaborating with other
I'm
talent.
chilling now. I'm chilling now, Crystal. I've done a lot.
Mhm.
So now this is like my cozy era. Like
Okay.
I'm like in jeans and a t-shirt, like a
Okay.
vintage
I see
t-shirt.
you got the
And
Balenciaga hoodie
oh
action
no,
going.
this is actually okay, maybe I'm lying. Maybe I'm not chilling. This is Martine Rose
Oh, okay.
and Tommy Hilfiger. They did a collab. But I'm
Mhm.
kind of in my like Hilfiger, Ralph Lauren, like vintage archive stuff. I think I mean well my favorite brand is Rick Owens, and I have a lot of Rick Owens. Just over the last decade I've just been a collector. But yeah, I pulled out like these old Ralph Lauren jeans from when I was probably in like high school, and I was like, this might be a vibe. They're worn in, they look comfortable, and I just put on like a Gucci loafer and a white t-shirt and put on the right cologne, and I got a fit off. So
That's amazing. All
yeah.
right, great. Well, we're gonna wrap it up, but I want to definitely ask you, do you have any, I know you said you're working on your album. Can you tell
Yes.
us anybody, drop any names or any future projects you want to share?
Well, Kehlani's been posting that she's back working on something new, so I've been working quietly with her on that. Um, I can share that because she shared it. My album, it's just a work in progress. I've literally just been online inviting people to the studio. Like, if you want to pull up and be a part of this thing that we're building, this community that we're building, like that's you DM me and I'll if I know you, I'll send you the address. If I don't, we'll have a little bit of a vetting process. But I wanna work with other artists and other producers and other songwriters. Um, I did see on your questions that you had one that was saying if I had any advice for other artists, and I would love to answer that question.
Yeah, that's my next
And
question. I would love to
yeah,
know what advice you'd give to young, aspiring musicians that look up to you.
yeah, there are two major things that I'm learning in real time right now as an artist, and I'm always gonna be transparent about what I'm learning in real time and what I don't know or what I didn't know. Um, My dad used to tell me all the time if there's scandal or unrest or anything in the world, always follow the money and you'll see the root of the problem. For artists, whether you're a singer, songwriter, producer, musician, follow the money. Be able to track where your involvement is in the recording and be able to quantify what that will mean for you financially. Be able to source what the accounting departments are at these labels, because it is really their job to hide the money from you until you find it, because it benefits them to be able to hold on to that money as long as they can so that they can have lower operating costs. And at the end of the day, this is how we're supposed to eat and feed our families and feed ourselves. And you need to know where that money is. And that would be my first question. Like when you sign your production contracts or your songwriting contracts where you do your splits, the first question you should be asking is, how do I get paid beyond the advance? Can you connect me with the accounting company at the label so that I can be registered in the portals? I will tell you now that it has been a nightmare tracking down and collecting all of the money that is owed to me. And I'm an established songwriter and established producer who has connections throughout all of these labels and throughout all of these buildings. And for some strange reason, nobody knows where to point me in the direction of. So I would, if you're an artist, whether you're starting or you're established, follow the money. The second thing, and it's a thing that I'm very passionate about, is about your assets. And I learned very quickly that my car is not an asset. I learned very quickly that my apartment, where I'm renting, is not an asset. Yes, do I get a tax deduction on it because my studio is here and I office out of here technically? Yeah, I do. But my assets aren't my my leather Gucci jackets or my Balenciaga hoodies or any of that, right? And a thing that I've been passionate about lately is just art, like the actual art, buying art,
Right.
investing in art. There is so much that you can leverage and do with owning art, original pieces, sometimes even prints, because some of these prints are super limited and there's only 5 or 20 in the world. And I believe that we're going to be looking in the future, we're going to be looking at millionaires, young millionaires who have invested into the art community in a very robust way at an early stage. And 10 years from now, they will be the Basquiat's. Those artists will be the Basquiat's, the Warhols. And if you have original pieces in your home, guard them with your life, insure them, and be sure that you know how to leverage that particular asset to fund your life and to, because there are so many art collectors and curators that are up millions and millions because they invested in an artist early. And so I would especially Black artists um support that community, because those will be the ones 10 years from now that will, and I don't do like financial advice,
Right.
but I can give you art advice. I've seen it happen so many times over. I remember when Hebrew Brantley was starting. I remember when so many of these young artists who are now the pillars of their communities were starting, and now their pieces are at auction for close to millions of dollars. So that's all I'm saying.
Major game. Yeah.
That's the game, and it's not that expensive. Like I think when I look in my closet and I see a leather Balenciaga jacket, I'm like, that's two original pieces.
Mm.
That's a $5,600 jacket that is two original pieces from a new artist. That's good too. That's going to look good in your house and make you look like the coolest person on the planet. But 10 years from now, you might be able to put your kids through college with one piece.
Right.
And
Right.
if you insure it, you can also leverage that insurance for money as well. So
That's
it's like,
fascinating. I just
yeah,
learned that too. So that's
yeah.
amazing. Yeah.
So I tell people that all the time, and it's not just paintings. It's photography. It's media, because there's a lot of like mixed media artists. Like you can still buy those pieces and own them. Galleries, museums will reach out to you because you're an owner. Every artist keeps a running tab of the owners, so that if a gallery wants to put their stuff up, if the Met wants to put up that artist's work 10 years from now and you own it, the Met's going to reach out to you and offer you money to hold that piece in the gallery. So
Wow. So
that's,
you can rent it out basically.
yeah. So
That's
that's what I'm saying. And that's what an asset is. Like
yeah.
if you buy a home and you decide, okay, I want to move into a new home, well, I'm going to put this home up for rent. And now that income is fueling the new property that you want. It's the same thing with art. And I don't think we talk about it enough, especially in Black and brown communities, the value of spending $1,800 on a piece of art and just letting it cook and sit for a second. It's the same as buying, into the stock market. But I feel like art is one of those things that doesn't devalue. It only appreciates. It's like buying a Birkin, you
That's
know?
amazing. That's
So
amazing. I can tell you're very passionate and knowledgeable about it. Like you could teach a
yeah.
course on that.
I'm learning more and more as I talk to artists and other collectors. Like that's been a big part of my community around this album. Is just speaking to people who are not typical musicians or composers. They're like my homies are also fine artists. And yeah, I have a couple pieces here in my apartment, and my boy Robert Moore was telling me, he was like, man, like a gallery in my hometown just commissioned all of my work. So my collectors are having to, decide whether they want to submit their pieces or leave it up in their homes, because I'm a new artist. And like some people just bought these pieces, but now the gallery, he's from Iowa. He's like, the biggest gallery in Iowa wants to do a symposium on my work. And now I'm having to reach out to my collectors, and it's just a big moment, for an artist and for collectors to see that people see value in what they've invested in. And it's the same as if you were buying stocks, like. So yeah, and I think the art market might be a little more stable than
Mhm.
certain investments. So
Dang. Okay, dropping gems today. All right, love it.
that's all. Two things for artists. That's it.
Yes.
Buy
Okay,
art
well,
and watch your money.
that's great advice.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you sitting down with us today for the Loop Report. And
Yeah.
I'd love to just wrap it up with one last question. This question's about legacy and just,
Okay.
how do you want to be remembered and what do you want your legacy to be in the music industry and beyond?
I think a thing that I've landed on recently is the idea of not getting it perfect, but getting it right. I think we spend so much time as creatives and as humans, like, on perfection. And sometimes we just need to get it right. Like sometimes we just need to turn it in. Sometimes we just need to like sing the song and not like worry about it being so perfect, because you don't know, your right might change somebody's life. you trying to be a perfectionist might result in it never seeing the light of day. And so I just want my legacy to be that I took some chances and I tried some things and I made some people happy and I made people feel things. And I spent most of my career trying to get it perfect. And I've seen the toll that it's taken on my life and on my mental health. And now I'm just trying to get it right. I'm trying to like, I'm trying to have a feeling and then share it with those who will listen. And if one day I'm blessed to have children, I want them to know that like dad is trying to get it right. And that's all. Like I don't want to put that much pressure on myself to get it perfect anymore. And I think that comes with age and wisdom. But I look at the world in a very different way now that I know that there's more people out here trying to get it right than perfect. And the people that are trying to get it right are like, they're killing it. And I'm over here trying to get it perfect. And right has gotten millions and millions of streams, views, and dollars. And I'm trying to get it perfect. And I think that's the beauty of growth. And that's the beauty of recognizing that um, I can get more done if I just get it right. And that's what I want people to know about me. And when you come hear me sing, we're getting it right. When when you're at the studio, we're getting it right. I'm very anti-perfect right now. And there's also so much beauty in like that organic thing. It's perfect for the time. It's perfect. It's perfect because you had the idea. It's perfect because you executed it. It's perfect because you recognize that the ideas aren't solely your creation or your concoction. There's something above you and around you and beneath you that's like giving you the opportunity. So yeah.
Yes. What a beautiful life lesson. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you, DIXSON, for sharing your wisdom, sharing your art with the world, for pushing through every day to continue to do what you love and let us enjoy it as well. So,
Yeah.
where can people tap in with you? Where can they find you?
I'm DIXSON, DIXSON everywhere. I'm trying to figure out my Twitch. This is my new obsession right now. I'm trying to figure it out because I do want people to be able to like see what's happening in the studio real time and not have to tie my phone up on Instagram Live because I do need to be able to communicate. But yeah, DIXSON everywhere. My music is everywhere you can stream music. A big thing you can do that will help me is just following like my artist pages on those platforms. There's a lot of value in that for the DSPs, which are the digital streaming platforms. And yeah, that would mean your Spotify's, Apple Music's, and titles. And yeah, stay tuned. It's about to be probably a fun year.
Can't wait. So
Yeah,
excited to hear your full-length project. We'll
yeah.
definitely keep you on heavy rotation and also just go the extra mile and leave a review as well. It'll help
Leave a
you
review.
more people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate you.